Welcome to Gradcast, the official podcast of the Society of Graduate Students at the University of Western Ontario.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Gradcast, the official podcast of the Society for Graduate Students. I'm Ramina Adam, here with my co-host Tyson Davis. Hi Tyson, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ramina. Thanks for asking.
And today we have a PhD candidate from the Library and Information Science program at Western, Mark Shane Scale. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well, for the most part.
Nice. Usually how grad students go. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Okay, well, I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, where I did my master's degree in Library and Information Studies. I also did my bachelor's in Kingston, Jamaica in political science. And I'm here doing my PhD in Library and Information Science by the Faculty of Information and Media Studies at Western, where I am kind of specializing in social media and library, social media in library and in librarianship. So.
Nice. So what brought you to Western all the way from Jamaica?
Well, I needed to do my PhD because I was working at University of the West Indies as an assistant lecturer. I started as a librarian and there's a vacancy and they wanted somebody to fill that vacancy. So I decided, they asked me if I could fill a vacancy for teaching, and I did it for 3 years. But in order for me to stay in that position, I needed to do my PhD. So I started the search for universities, and Canada was a very good option for me because, unlike the United States of America, I didn't have to do the credit records examination.
Oh, that's nice. It's always nice to skip that one.
Yes. And so my choices actually boil down to two library schools, Western and University of Toronto. University of Toronto's application fee was a bit pricey, at least more than Western, so I guess an economic decision kind of prompted.
Very practical, economical.
Yeah.
What we have to do.
Yeah. But I did find at least some of the researchers that I liked, especially what their critique of information technology, coming from Western, like Gloria Leckie. So yeah.
Nice. What got you interested in library and information science to begin with? Like, that's such a, it's not something that you would just do in high school and, get interested in like that. So what got you?
That's right. That's a great question. I've always been interested in information technology, but I didn't want to do programming and coding. My dad was a programmer, and I saw him. I would go to bed at night, and I would wake up, and I would still see him at the computer screen. So I kind of ruled it out as a career option for me because I didn't want to spend all night working on computers. But I did like information technology, and I found that if there was a degree that didn't force me to do the programming aspect, I perhaps would have chosen it. In the end, I chose political science. I was headed to more theoretical research and academic research, when I recognized that there's a colleague of mine who was doing the library program, and she was doing web pages design, database design. I said, wait, those are things that I love personally. I would love to do that. So that was one of the things that kind of piqued my interest in library and information science. That they focus on technology, but not so much on the back end and the programming and the codes, but more how to use it to store information, manage information, and to be able to retrieve information in a timely fashion. So that was what really got me interested in library and information science.
Nice. So now we can get into your PhD project, the meat of this interview.
Sure.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
All right.
Actually, a lot about that.
Okay, so my current research is focusing on doing a narrative analysis of blogging platforms and Twitter platforms for the narratives that represent the identity of library consultants and the work of library consulting. So what that entails is I'm applying this method of finding narratives and how they try to represent a particular work identity that is prevalent in modern times. Let me start by talking about consulting. Consulting is a billion-dollar industry, and it spans diverse institutions in the public sector and the private sector. There's consultants for everything, for doing your accounts, for budgeting, for marketing, strategic planning, information technology, all that, and they are used in schools, churches, universities, and pretty much anywhere. These people are this type of work is also done in libraries, and for me, I find that while my scholars are interested in how neoliberal practices impact librarianship and how the change in the state giving full financial support to libraries and education and universities, how their withdrawal of that funding and their privileging of partnerships between private sector and public sector, and as well as libraries having to try to adjust how they do their practices and how they manage the infrastructure so that they can save more money, be more efficient and effective. They have to draw on consultants. Part of the reliance on consultants is to help them to know what technologies to adopt, how to apply marketing and traditional business practices to managing libraries. So that's the context or background. The scholars the scholars in librarianship, they have not looked at consulting itself. They have looked at these practices that libraries have adopted, these business and managerial practices such as outsourcing. They have looked at the deprofessionalization of librarianship and those issues that are associated with this trend. But they have not really looked at the rise in library consulting and the reliance on consultants to help libraries restructure and to change ways of doing and implement new technologies and new business and managerial practices. Yeah, so
just one thing, I'm just going to intervene here. So what is something that a library consultant would do? Like, could you give us something specific for people who don't know?
All right. Okay. So library consultant, and I must mention that there are two types, basically two types of library consultants. You have consultants who don't necessarily have a library background or library degree, but they have other expertise that librarians might need, such as perhaps customer service. So we have customer service consultants who might come into libraries and give them advice about how to approach customer service. How they what they need, what policies they need to put in place, what practices they need to put in place, what their signs should look like, how they should greet customers. If libraries use the term customers, how they should greet them when they come into the library and give them a more fulfilling experience. That's one. So that's one group. And then you have accountants like the Deloitte Canada. Price Water and Coopers and those consultants who come in and look at the library's budget and advise as to where they can make savings and so on. You also have information technology consultants who come into libraries and guide them into what systems they should adopt and implement information technology systems, what software and what hardware they should purchase. So you have those types of consultants. But you also have another category of consultants who are experienced librarians, who they have experienced working in libraries and in administration, and they offer that expertise for a fee. There are also librarians who have special niche expertise, such as gaming consultants. You have some persons who specialize in gaming, and they talk about how libraries can apply gaming to libraries. Whether it might be gamification, how they can gamify some of the library website or the library space to make it more interesting for persons to use the library, or whether it's how to put a game collection into the library or have gaming programs. And then you have other persons with other niche expertise, perhaps a language expertise, as how can you develop this collection in terms of a particular language, whether it's French, Spanish, etc. So you have those various niche expertise that library consultants might bring to the library. So again, the two groups, the general consultants and managerial consultants, and then you have the library consultants who usually have a library background, library education, and a particular niche area.
Okay. And so how does social media fit into all of this? How do you bring that to the table?
Okay, great. Well, one of the reasons why I selected social media as a major area of data source is that when we do interviews, usually we know who we are going to interview. So we know the sampling frame, the sampling list. Who. We first start by identifying the group. But what I wanted to do was different. I recognize that social media, especially blogging platforms and Twitter, have been used to talk about work and work identity. It's used by librarians to discuss their profession, and trends in their profession. And one of the things that one of the questions I asked, wouldn't it be a new approach to, rather than beginning by starting with consultants and interviewing consultants and their clients, wouldn't it be a new approach to start with who is talking about live consultants on these platforms, on Twitter and blogs? So I decided it might be an interesting approach, different from the traditional research of just going to interview persons that you perhaps purposely have selected and know. So I would identify first those who are talking about the consultants, and then I would be able to use their narratives to analyze their narratives for what they say, how they represent consultants, if they represent them positively or negatively, and what are the representations how they construct those representations.
So what have you found anything so far? Are they represented more positively, negatively? Is it different across the platforms?
Right. Good question. Yes, I found. So my initial research, I have two databases. One with blogging platforms. I selected 4 blogging platforms, and I have 367 blog texts that talk about live consultants, or at least mention them. And I also have 605 tweets collected over a span of 2000, since Twitter was implemented to 2014, where I looked at every mention of live consultants and live consulting. And from these I've gotten a wealth of narratives that kind of show how live consultants are, the identity of live consultants are constructed in librarianship and in the larger discourse, societal discourse. So one of the main things that we have certain discourse, or what I call master narratives, that kind of put out scripts for live consultants, or storylines about live consultants, about consultants in general. They represent consultants positively as outsiders that have something beneficial to offer to their clients. They usually represent consultants as experts, knowledgeable experts. However, you find that while we have these scripts in the discourse and the official literature, in blogs and tweets, you find some alternative representations to the wider literature. I found, especially in Twitter, I found that live consultants are more ridiculed in Twitter than they are in blogs. And there are perhaps reasons for that that we could explain. For one, in tweets, I find that tweets are more conversational and they're shorter to write, and so you find that most live, I wouldn't say most, I may not use the term most library, but at least for my research, the data said most of the critical narratives of live consultants, they emerge from the Twitter platform, where you have a number of narrators conversing about the bad behavior of live consultants, or that they charge too much money, they're greedy, the power issues that are involved in librarianship. Those things come out in tweets that don't necessarily come out in blogs. In blogs, the narratives are more in line with the positive representation of library consultants, or silences, where persons only mention library consultants in one sentence but don't elaborate, or even if they mention them, they ascribe positive qualities to them, but they briefly talk about them. So there's more, let's say, more. There's more diversity in tweet data than in the blog data.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who are the group of people that are doing this tweeting about the library consultants? Are they librarians or people who run libraries?
Good question. Yes, actually, there's a mixture. There are library consultants who talk about themselves, so they position themselves as characters in a narrative where they are doing these great things. They have this amount of work experience, and this is their qualifications, and they list their connections with libraries, their qualification, their publications, etc. So they're talking about themselves, and they're doing self-presentation. Mm-hmm. Then there are others that tell what we call retold narratives about library consultants. So rather than create their own personal narratives about library consultants, they tell of events that library consultants were at and that they presented at, or that they are going to be presented at, and they evaluate. They post these narratives of like breaking news. Yes, this library consultant will be presenting at this event, or those kind of breaking news stories, those small stories where they talk about, okay, this library consultant presented at such and such an event, and their talk was on this topic, and so on. So you have those others. These others are librarians, archivists, and other individuals within librarianship. Then you also have institutions that kind of post, let's say, documents or text about library consultants. Some of these are job descriptions, some of these are event announcements, etc. And then you also have, on the other side, librarians who kind of resent the power that library consultants have, or bad behavior, especially of particular consultants, or there are other issues that they have, such as the fact that sometimes managers choose library consultants when they could have actually used staff to do the work, or if it's a case of getting feedback, they would argue that you could get that feedback from unions and from customers and from workers rather than hiring library consultants. So yeah, there are some kind of what happens? You see some kind of, let's see, turf war or some kind of conflict emerging out of the narratives about the identity of library consultants. But there are positive things as well. People are praising them. There are people who have been introduced to new technology because of them, or to new knowledge. So in a sense, the what I call the functionalist discourse, where library consultants are positioned as the change agents, and the people who transfer knowledge from different areas into libraries. That also takes place within these narratives.
Awesome. So,
That's right.
just out of curiosity, it seems like this has came up quite a few times, actually, in our interviews. Somehow your research involving Twitter. We all had to get Twitter when we started on this radio show, because we were, trying to promote our radio show. Did you get Twitter before you started, or did you have to get it as a result of your PhD?
Well, I've always been one of those connected librarians in that when I started my teaching back in the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, one of the areas I saw that I could be unique in is in social media. That's where I could specialize my research, because my other colleagues, they already had other areas, the expertise in the years, but social media was something new to them, and I found that because of the age difference, that and perhaps my closest to technology, my interest in technology, that social media was something that I I thought I could do research from early as 2007. So I first started studying Facebook, and then I got my Twitter account and blogs, and got immersed into all these different technological platforms.
Nice. So as we wrap up, can you tell us a little bit about your future plans? I know you're in your 4th year of a PhD program. Any future plans in mind?
Well, the immediate future goal is to finish.
Yep.
to complete the writing up. I've currently analyzed data. I'm doing some back and forth with the committee regarding the analysis. But as soon as I'm completing that, I plan to present a paper to to librarians at a conference in June. So yeah, just talk about the tales from the tweets, which are particularly interesting, and then hopefully to get a book on this topic.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on our show. It was nice chatting with you.
Thank you very much, and we'll catch you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
That's all for this week. If you want to send us some feedback, or if you want to come on the show yourself, email us at gradcastradio@gmail.com. Be sure to hook us up on social media. On Twitter, we're at GradcastRadio, and look up Gradcast Radio also on Facebook. If you want to subscribe to the podcast is located at gradcast.podbean.com, and it's on iTunes. And while you're there, why don't you leave us a review? It really helps us out. We'll see you guys next week.
We can fix that in post.